Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump appeared in the same arena just 4 days apart, each addressing overflowing crowds as if they were concert stars or prize fighters. These rival events took place 3 months before Election Day in the state that had the narrowest margin in the 2020 presidential race. The rallies presented not only contrasting visions of the nation in terms of policy and tone, but also showcased significantly different types of attendees and even varied music playlists. These dynamics prompt inquiries into how a divided populace might react to a potential Trump return or a Harris rise. On this point, at least 2 individuals who visited the Georgia State Convocation Center on separate days could find common ground. "It's fine to have different ideologies," said Angela Engram, a 59-year-old Democrat who traveled from Stockbridge, Georgia, to hear Harris speak on Tuesday. "But now it's all about parties, personalities, and power, with people not even making an effort to understand each other." Tracy Maddux, a 67-year-old retired grocer from Sparta, Georgia, who attended Trump's rally on Saturday, echoed Engram's concerns about politics in 24. However, Maddux attributed the issue to Engram's party, arguing that Democrats have become indifferent to ordinary people. Engram, on the other hand, placed the blame on Trump and his supporters, particularly those who perpetuate the falsehood that Trump's 2020 loss to Democrat Joe Biden was rigged. Both crowds contribute to a battleground coalition. With Biden exiting the race in July and Democrats promoting Harris, both major party candidates now have the momentum to fill arenas. Harris, the first woman, the first black woman, and the first person of South Asian descent to serve as vice president, attracted a racially and generationally diverse crowd, though the majority were black and female. Democrats danced to a mix of R&B, hip-hop, and pop music, enjoying performances by guest star Megan Thee Stallion and celebrating Beyoncé's Freedom, which has become Harris's entrance song and campaign anthem. Trump drew a predominantly white audience with a noticeable presence of black voters. His playlist reflected his eclectic musical tastes, featuring artists like the Village People and ABBA, with a significant amount of country music. The crowd went wild when the first notes of his signature walk-up song, "God Bless the USA" by Trump supporter Lee Greenwood, began to play. It was 2 very different crowds in just one of a nation's battleground states that will determine the presidency. In 2020, Biden campaigned vigorously with black voters, younger voters, other non-white voters, and college-educated white voters in metropolitan areas like Atlanta. Trump, on the other hand, focused on rural areas, small towns, and smaller cities. In Georgia, Biden won by 11,779 votes out of 5 million cast. Both campaigns anticipate that the Harris-Trump contest will follow a similar pattern, with the party's core supporters playing crucial roles in the outcomes in Georgia and nationally. Last week's event, featuring Harris, frustrated Republicans to the point where they downplayed her involvement. "They had a big crowd. They had some entertainment here. They were doing some twerking," said Georgia Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who served as one of Trump's fake electors after the 2020 election. Jones alleged that Harris's crowd thinned after Megan Thee Stallion's performance. However, that was not the case during the 25 minutes Harris spoke. In fact, Trump lost a significant number of supporters throughout his 91-minute speech. 2 rallies presented 2 very different American visions. Democrats celebrated Harris as a historic figure who could use her background to benefit all Americans. "She brings all of those strands together," said Raphael Warnock, Georgia's first black U.S. Senator, on Tuesday. "She sees us because, in a real sense, she is all of us." Harris focused more on policy than biography, addressing key concerns like inflation and immigration. Regarding inflation, she implicitly attributed the issue to corporate greed, vowing to tackle price gouging and hidden fees. Democrats highlighted Biden's significant spending initiatives as crucial investments in clean energy, domestic manufacturing, including the growing electric battery plants in Georgia, and infrastructure improvements that previous presidents, including Trump, had failed to achieve. On Saturday, Republicans argued that these measures were responsible for rising prices and portrayed Harris as a radical threatening national values. Trump predicted dire outcomes under a Harris administration, warning of a crash like 1929, potential involvement in World War III, and rampant crime and foreign gang violence in the suburbs. He asserted, if Kamala wins, it will be crime, chaos, and death all across our country. Harris focused more on policy than biography, addressing key concerns like inflation and immigration. Regarding inflation, she implicitly attributed the issue to corporate greed, vowing to tackle price gouging and hidden fees. Democrats highlighted Biden's significant spending initiatives as crucial investments in clean energy, domestic manufacturing, including the growing electric battery plants in Georgia, and infrastructure improvements that previous presidents, including Trump, had failed to achieve. On Saturday, Republicans argued that these measures were responsible for rising prices and portrayed Harris as a radical threatening national values. Trump predicted dire outcomes under a Harris administration, warning of a crash like 1929, potential involvement in World War III, and rampant crime and foreign gang violence in the suburbs. He asserted, if Kamala wins, it will be crime, chaos, and death all across our country. Michaela Montgomery, a black conservative activist, participated in Trump's recent ridicule of Harris's racial and ethnic identity. Montgomery argued, she's only black when it's time to get elected. The predominantly white audience responded with laughter and cheers. To his running mate J.D. Vance, Trump was portrayed as a living martyr who took a bullet for the country. Speakers recalled the scene of a bloodied Trump standing up after a would-be assassin's bullet grazed his ear at a Pennsylvania rally 3 weeks prior. This image was prominently displayed on T-shirts worn by the Atlanta audience. At the Harris rally, Trump was portrayed as the former president with a criminal record who ran a profit-driven online college, was found liable for sexual abuse in civil court, denied the 2020 election results, and watched as his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol to block Biden's certification as his successor. I have been dealing with people like him my entire career, said Harris, a former prosecutor in California. There was no mention on Tuesday of Trump's near-death experience or Biden's subsequent call to reduce political rhetoric. However, there were chants of, lock him up, cries that started while Biden was still in the race, but reached a deafening crescendo in Atlanta. The chant is a response to Republicans who 8 years ago shouted, lock her up, about Hillary Clinton, Trump's Democratic opponent. She has never been charged with any crime. Consensus is becoming an increasingly elusive concept. Presidential campaigns always involve differences and divisions. In the past 50 years, only once has the winner surpassed 55% of the total votes cast, Republican Ronald Reagan in 1984. It has been more common for the winner not to even win the popular vote, as was the case with Trump in 2016 and Republican George W. Bush in 2000. Engram, a supporter of Harris from Stockbridge, continued to find reasons for optimism. There is truly so much we all have in common if people would just calm down and reflect on it, she said, though she voiced skepticism about whether Trump's Make America Great Again movement would ever contribute to national unity. She believed that healthier discourse under a Harris administration would rely on the good Republicans who are not all MAGA. Trump's allies did not indicate that they aimed for consensus. Pastor Jensen Franklin from Gainesville, Georgia, used his invocation on Saturday to describe the election as a spiritual battle. U.S. Representative Mike Collins, Argah, cautioned about a leftist regime behind Harris. They hate you, but Donald Trump loves you. Trump spent considerable time reiterating his false claims of losing the 2020 election due to voter fraud. He criticized not only Democrats, but also Governor Brian Kemp, the most influential Republican in Georgia, and others whom Trump accused of failing the party by not assisting him in overturning Biden's victory. On Tuesday, Democrats infused their remarks about voting with references to the late civil rights leaders Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis, who represented the Atlanta area in Congress for many years. Warnock derided Trump as a Florida man who made a notorious phone call pressuring the Georgia Secretary of State to find 11,780 votes to declare him the winner of the 2020 election. Amidst all the rhetoric, both candidates acknowledged the theme of unity. We are one movement, one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God, said the former president. The vice president's version, "We love our country, and I believe it is the highest form of patriotism to fight for its ideals. And when we fight, we win. But only one of them will emerge victorious."